Good evening. We welcome you all to tonight's debate, sponsored by the Lackawanna County League of Women Voters and the Political Science Department of the University of Scranton. My name is Patty Fowler. I'm the current president of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County. The League is nonpartisan, which means we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The mission of the League is to promote politically responsible through the informed and active participation by citizens in their government. We encourage you to join the League. Membership information can be found on your program, or if you go to our website, printed in your program at www.lwvlackawanna.org. Please support our work by making a donation on your way out. Donations help us cover costs, including recording, so that the debates can be viewed by a wider audience. Volunteers are at the back of the room and will be more than happy to accept your donation on the way out. ECTV is taping tonight's debate. This is not a live broadcast. The taped debate will be aired on Comcast 19 local TV. So please check the ECTV schedule, which can be found on your program. The taped debate will also be available on your YouTube via links from our website. Please join us Thursday, same place, same time, for a debate among the candidates for the Republican primary for the 8th Congressional District, which includes all of Lackawanna County, Wayne, Pike, and portions of Monroe and Luzerne counties. Now, a few procedural items. Please turn off and/or silence all cell phones and devices. Please be aware that it is our policy that no person, candidate, or political group is allowed to use or edit any media from any league event for campaign purposes. Any use of the media requires the express written approval of the League. No excerpts or sound bites may be taken from tonight's debate. Tonight's debate is between the candidates for the Democratic primary for the 112th Pennsylvania Legislative District. That encompasses the boroughs of Archibald, Blakely, Jessup, Oliphant, Troup, Dunmore, and part of Scranton. Our moderator is Andrea Lorine.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you everyone for being here this evening. Tonight we have 5 candidates who are running for this office in the Democratic primary, and it is my privilege to introduce them to you. They're seated on the stage alphabetically. We will do the questions in a round robin, so we have drawn straws or names, if you will, for the person who will answer the first question, and then we just move in a circle from there. And then we've also drawn the name for the person who will give the first closing statement this evening, and we'll just move in a circle from there as well. We do ask that you hold your applause and any comments from the audience. This is 5 people running for this office. We have 90 minutes to get through quite a bit of information from them, so we appreciate your cooperation in holding applause until your candidate has given his closing statement. So first we have Tom Carlucci. Tom was born in Scranton, graduated from Dunmore High School. He earned a bachelor's in education and public policy from Penn State University. He's the founder and CEO of Education Enlightenment, a community alliance for public education, and he's currently a behavioral interventionist for kids with autism, and he lives in Dunmore. Randy Castellani is a graduate of Valley View High School, attended East Stroudsburg University, graduated from the Lackawanna Police Academy, and has served as Lackawanna County Commissioner from 1999 to 2005. Mr. Castellani is employed by Lackawanna County Emergency Services 911, and he's been involved with many local groups and community fundraisers over the past 20 years, including coaching youth sports for over 11 years. He lives in Einan with his wife Laura and has 4 children. Next to him,
5 children.
5 children. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Please apologize to your kids for me. I left one out. Robert Castellani, born in Scranton, graduated from Valley View High School, attended Temple University, volunteered for many years coaching junior football A and B teams, and he works at Tom Hesser Chevrolet BMW as a sales manager. Lives in Peckville with his wife Iris and 3 children? Okay. Next, we have Francis McHale, born in Scranton, graduated high school from South Catholic High School, He earned his bachelor's in history from the University of Scranton, also his master's in business from the University of Scranton, and his Juris Doctorate from Catholic University. He was a 1984 alternative delegate to the Democratic National Convention and served on the Pennsylvania Democratic State Committee from 1986 to 1996. He has previously run for U.S. Congress in 2000, and he is a practicing attorney since 1977 and also a CPA since 1982, and Francis lives in Scranton. And finally, again seated alphabetically, Kyle Mullins, born in Syracuse but graduated from Valley View High School. He earned his bachelor's from Westchester University, and he volunteers his time as a member of the Amber Alert Missing Persons Task Force. He's an annual participant of the Multiple Sclerosis Society fundraiser, member of Friendly Sons of St. Patrick and the St. Patrick's Day Parade Society. And he's currently a legislative director to Senator John Blake, lives in Peckville, Blakely Borough, with his wife Lauren and his son Connor. So welcome all of our candidates this evening. As is our practice, we do not allow an opening statement, so I'm going to get right to the first question. And we have Tom Carlucci will answer the first question. So we're going to start with the topic that's near and dear to the hearts of League of Women Voters members, and that is government redistricting. Do you support or oppose reforming our congressional and legislative redistricting process to implement an independent citizens redistricting commission to take the process out of the control of politicians? And we would like you to explain your position. Tom, you've got 90 seconds.
Thank you, Andrea, and League of Women Voters for hosting this event this evening. I am absolutely in favor of making sure that we have an independent citizens commission to handle that process going forward. For far too long, we have had politicians infiltrating the decisions when it comes to gerrymandering. This is taking the power away from the people, and this is something that is completely unacceptable in my eyes. We need to represent the people within those districts, therefore those people within those district lines need to have a say in how these lines are drawn. So yes, I am in favor of that.
Okay, thank you. And the question now goes to Randy.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this debate tonight. I am also in favor of the redistricting. Go back to 2014. Remember what happened to the 112th and 115th district. You had two sitting state representatives battling one another in now what is the 112th district. It made for a very, very difficult decision for a lot of people to choose who the representative was going to be at that particular time. I'm also in favor of some type of independent commission, and I said this at the last debate, whether it's two Democrats, two Republicans, two Green Party, maybe two independents, to be able to come up and decide as far as where redistricting lines would be. I do want to commend, although, the court system this past year for doing a fantastic job in redistricting the congressional seats on a statewide level. I think they did a great job. It was not left in the hands of the Republicans. The court did a great job in being able to do that. So it was fair, more fair than it was prior to.
Thank you. Rob, the question to you.
Yes, I'm absolutely in favor of it. The voters should be able to pick their candidate for who they want. The committee has to be non-biased, and basically the committee must be drawn up by citizens from both parties, the Republican Party as well as your Democratic Party. And there can't be influence, going back to gerrymandering, where they are chosen and picked by candidates to have a strong area of influence over the people. It's basically an unconstitutional act, as far as I'm concerned. So again, I'll repeat what I said. The people should choose their candidates. The committee must be picked and not have any influence whatsoever with the candidates that are running for office.
Thank you. Francis, the question goes to you.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks for the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this debate. Every 10 years, we have a census in this country, and that's what determines you know, the population every 10 years. So that's what mandates the redistricting to create proportionality across the Commonwealth. We don't know at this point in time who's going to be in control of the governorship, the legislature, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court happens to be under Democratic control at this time. So I would absolutely be in favor. It's working in favor of us, the Democratic Party now, but it could work against us in a couple of years. So I would absolutely be in favor of a commission. I would say one thing, however, the United States Supreme Court has 2 cases in front of it right now, and they're the supreme law of the land, and they will be setting the parameters for redistricting over the course of the summer. So we have to watch out and look at what they're going to say, but I'm definitely would be in favor if we could somehow work out some bipartisan commission, create some sort of neutrality to have reasonable boundaries.
Thank you. And Kyle, the question to you.
Thank you very much for the question, and to the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate. I've long felt that gerrymandering is one of the greatest threats to our democracy. Politicians should not be picking their voters. Voters should be picking their politicians. One of the first pieces of legislation I was tasked with working on was an independent citizens commission to do just that in my role as Senator Blake's legislative director. Our founding fathers never intended for the political pendulum that swings left and right to get so stuck as it has. So I would absolutely support that and look forward to proposing that bill and co-sponsoring that bill once in Harrisburg.
Thank you. So the next question, we're going to stick with government reform, and let's talk a little bit about campaign finance reform. And this question will go first to Randy Castellani. But before I do that, I want to apologize. I forgot to mention that we do allow each candidate up to 3 rebuttals, 30 seconds each. They can use them as they see fit, and you just have to say to me that you want to use a rebuttal, and we'll fit you in there. So, campaign finance reform. Pennsylvania does not limit money contributed directly to a candidate for state or local offices, or money spent in support of a candidate that is not coordinated with the candidate's campaign. What is your position on campaign finance reform? And please be specific about what changes should be made. Randy, the question goes to you.
Thank you, Andrea. I would absolutely be in favor of this particular situation, only because we can't afford to have our candidates taking money from the lobbyists, the special interest groups, and the people that ultimately end up determining outcomes of an election. I'm going to take you back to 2012, when we had an opportunity to put a severance tax in the state of Pennsylvania. And the lobbyists and the special interest took over the Republican Party in giving them over, I believe, $10 million or more in campaign finance lobbyist money, which was a disaster to this state. If we were able to have a severance tax in this state, we would be able to pay for a lot of the educational needs that we lack in our schools today. And I firmly believe that we need to reform this, with lobbyists, special interest groups giving to candidates to be able to win an election.
Rob, the question to you, please.
Yes, money does definitely influence election. There has to be some sort of reform that's set up. The more money poured into a candidate's fund, the more he can advertise. And again, even going to lobbyists, these PACs, more and more money to influence voters. We've gotten away from grassroots. We really have. We've gotten away from door-to-door campaigns. We've gotten away to meeting the people, to getting out there, to getting what you believe in, to getting your word out there. And I think it's a shame, because we get 27 to 32% that vote in Lackawanna County every year. And why is that? They don't know who's even in the race. I've been knocking on doors all over, along with my wife and committee members. They don't even know who's in this race. It's a shame. It really, really is. there should definitely be caps on what a candidate is allowed to receive in a primary and in a general election. Absolutely. And it would be a deterrent then. Make them get up, make them go out, and make them campaign. Thank you.
Francis, the question to you.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, it's really striking because there's absolutely no limits on contributions. In other states, there are dollar limits, so I would be in favor of a couple things. If we could get our Republican brethren to agree to some sort of public funding of campaigns, to have a pool of taxpayer dollars set aside so that there's an allocation of money for, various offices. I would be in favor of dollar limits, $500 for state legislative races, an upper limit for individual contributions, $1,000 for Senate races, $2,000 for the governor's race. So absolutely, we have to do something about this because, we're at the point now where on the state level, it's wide open. On the federal level, it's wide open. The Citizens United case decided by the Supreme Court, anything goes on both levels here in Pennsylvania. So definitely I would be in favor of that.
Thank you. And Kyle, the question to you.
Certainly, I support greater transparency and accountability at all levels of government, including PAC contributors. I would support dollar limits. I would support public financing of campaigns, as you heard tonight. And I would encourage the overturning of the Citizens United decision.
Okay, thank you. And Tom, the question to you.
Subject is extremely important to me. When I rode a bicycle from Einan to Harrisburg, 150 miles, that inspiration actually came a little bit from his book called Granny D, where Doris had actually tried to walk across the country to advocate, I think she was in her 90s, to advocate for campaign finance reform. Because even that long ago, we're still looking at how it's compromised the democracy as democracy was intended. Like Robert said, I mean, we have to get back to the grassroots of that whole situation, which is why I have to reiterate, my concerns when we have candidates here, Kyle Mullins, for example, who has accepted an extreme substantial amount of money from outside this district, from lobbyists and special interests. In my eyes, if you want to represent this district, then your fundraisers will be here. Your fundraisers aren't going to be in-kind donations from the largest lobby groups in Harrisburg. So I believe that it's absolutely imperative that we put dollar caps on those. As Francis had mentioned, in other states they do that. But it's more important that we get back to this grassroots to actually represent the people that are within these lines. That's who's voting us in, and that's who we need to represent.
Thank you. Kyle?
I'd like to cash in a rebuttal.
Okay.
I've been hearing these attacks since the last debate, and frankly, it's pretty sad. When a campaign gets desperate, they do and say desperate things to try to impugn the character of another candidate. I'm not interested in attacking my opponents or the way they run their campaigns. I'm interested in making our community stronger and safer. I'm interested in good jobs at good wages, and that's why I've sought out and proudly earned the support of the pillars of our community: public school teachers, service workers, electricians. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we're going to continue on with a little bit of reform for the government, and I want to talk briefly about election reform. So Pennsylvania is one of 14 states with a closed primary system, which means that registered voters of a third party or someone who has no party affiliation can't vote in the primary. And there are other forms of primaries that allow minor party registered voters and independent voters to vote. Would you support adopting an open primary which would allow independent or minor party registered voters to vote in the primary? And Rob, the question goes to you first.
That I would. The reason for is our voting process is ancient. It really, really is. And I mean, it's a long day. You realize you get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, goes till 8 o'clock at night. There's other methods. There's other states using online voting where you have access to an internet and you could vote. There's also procedures where you can vote early for a candidate if you like. And they still do keep the polls open, for people that don't have an internet system. So, I mean, you have to look at the whole picture here, and you have to look at every constituent out there. I believe that we have to make it feasible for everyone in general, so every constituent has an opportunity to vote for their candidate.
Thank you. Francis, the question to you.
Yes, I would not be in favor of an open primary system. I am very concerned about where the country's headed overall, and I'm concerned about the erosion of support of the party system. I'm a proud Democrat. My goal is to make the Democratic Party more widely attractive to people. If you want to vote in our primary, hopefully you will be attracted to our party, to join our party. I'm excited about the prospects of our party, but if you register as an independent, then under my mindset, then you remove yourself from participating in our primary.
Okay, thank you. Kyle, the question to you, please.
I would indeed support an open primary system. I believe our electoral system is strong when we have absolute maximum participation. I believe we are seeing a new generation of voters and young people interested in playing an active role in their government. And I feel as if the old two-party system doesn't always neatly fit their priorities. So I believe we need to welcome others into our primary system.
Okay. Tom, the question to you, please.
I do support an open primary. As I have been knocking doors within this district, there are a lot of residents who are affiliated with different parties than the two main parties. And they come across as they are extremely informed voters. And these are the people that I want to help cast these votes and put the person in front of them that's going to represent them for the next 2 years or 4 years or wherever it may be. So I think that there is a new voting age and generation that we need to attend to, and these people need their voices heard. I think it's preposterous that we're not listening to every voice within a district that we're being elected for. So yes, I'm in favor of open primary.
Okay, thank you. And Randy, the question goes to you.
I would also be in favor of open primary. People need to be given an opportunity. And I do like the idea of, let's even talk about absentees. There are people that want to vote absentee. Maybe they can't get out of the house for whatever reason, and they want to do an absentee. They should be able to do that. There are some limitations, but I do firmly believe that we do need to let everyone's voice be heard, as long as it's done safely. I'm not sure who mentioned about going online, but online right now can be an issue, hacking, and other things that would be important to our state and the nation as well. So I would absolutely be in favor of it, but I do think there are some areas that it works well the way it is right now, but I would be in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to continue on with a question that pertains to what your job would be as a state rep, and talk about a conflict of interest. So a bill prohibiting certain gifts to members of the Pennsylvania legislature was introduced in the Pennsylvania House and referred to the Committee on State Government on April 6, 2018. And the bill would prohibit members of the legislature from soliciting or accepting for their personal use a gift, gratuity, favor, entertainment, hospitality, loan, or other thing of monetary value, including in-kind gifts from any person who it might influence you. They're doing business with the state, whatever. So that's what the bill is about. If this bill, here's the big if the bill ever makes it out of committee, would you support or oppose it and provide your rationale for your position? And Francis, you would answer this question first, please.
Yeah, first of all, I'm financing my own campaign in the primary. I'm not taking any money from anyone. I'll have my campaign finance report filed in a couple days. I'm working on it right now. Absolutely, I would not. I would be in favor of that legislation. I would never accept any gift whatsoever. I spent 7 years, 4 months in Harrisburg working for Governor Robert P. Casey. I considered him to be a model politician. There was never any question. No one ever questioned his integrity. He held us to a high standard when we were in Harrisburg. And so I know how the game is played down there. I lived down there for 7 years and 4 months, as I said. And I would hold myself to a high standard. I've been an attorney since 1977. I've been a CPA since 1982. I've never run into any issue with the disciplinary boards of either of those bodies.
Thank you. Kyle, a little bit of housekeeping before we continue. Kyle, if you would make sure that you pull that microphone close up to you so that everybody can hear. And gentlemen, if you leave the microphone turned on, we're missing the first couple words when you're flicking it on and off, okay? So Kyle, I apologize. The question is about conflict of interest policy, and it goes to you.
Certainly. We need leaders in government who prioritize the people they serve, not enriching themselves. That is why I would support that type of gift ban. That's why I would support things like submitting actual mileage and ending per diems that politicians in Harrisburg avail themselves of. I would support ending state-leased vehicles. For the last 7 years, I've traveled up and down I-81 and stayed in Harrisburg at a friend's house to avoid the expense of a hotel or an apartment. That is the type of fiscal restraint and responsibility our elected leaders should demonstrate, and I will continue to do so from the State House.
Thank you. And Tom, the question goes to you.
Yes, banning these gifts is essential, and that's why I'm not attacking character when I mention that we need to steer far from special interest and lobbyists. This legislation wouldn't even be enacted if it wasn't an issue. Tom Wolf has made this abundantly clear that it is an extreme issue, and it's why the decisions aren't being made to help Pennsylvanians move forward. So this is a very important issue to me, and I would absolutely 110% support this bill, along with others that limit the access of influence that lobbyists have in Harrisburg.
Thank you. And Randy, the question to you.
Yes, I would also be in favor. Tom, you bring up a good point. You're absolutely right. This probably would not be on the table if, in fact, we weren't receiving millions and billions of dollars from the lobbyists. Zero tolerance for gifts, perks, football tickets, whatever it may be, to try to persuade or get you to vote their way. Or I just totally agree. I would not be part of any of that, as well as the per diems and other perks that would be given to the legislature.
Thank you. And Rob, the question to you.
It comes down again to transparency. And of course, I would not support this. I would be in favor of any bill that would restrict this. And getting back to what Kyle did say, I am giving 20% back of my salary to the 112th. Okay, I'm going to do that because it's the right thing to do. The salary is $87,000 a year. 20% off of that, I'll be making 70 grand a year. If I can help out any foundations that need money, any drug awareness programs that need money, that's what I'm doing. And people have questioned me about it, like, Rob, why would you want to give money back? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to help a district that has a state representative that has missed 6 months of work, 300 votes, and put us in the dire strait that we are in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to legislation that needs to be passed, and one of the most difficult issues that's facing our country at this time, and that's the issue of firearms. So our government, as you know, must balance often conflicting individual rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with obligations to protect public health, safety, and security. What do you believe is the proper balance among conflicting individual rights and collective rights with regard to firearms? And Kyle, the question goes to you first.
This is an intensely personal question for me, and it should be for anyone out there with children who are in or are heading to school. Until 7th grade, I didn't have to worry about or have any appreciation for the fact that a gunman could enter my school and change the world in such a terrible and tragic way. The world is a new place since then, and mass shootings have happened far too often. And I'd like to think that my 15-month-old son may go to school and live and grow up in a world where these mass shootings, which are happening with awful regularity, are only read about in the darkest pages of his history books. I fully believe that our guns are safe when we're safe about our gun laws. I believe that there is a difference, and there needs to be a distinction between the type of weapons that we possess to protect our life, our property, and our families, and the type of weapons we hunt with, and the type of weapons that are so powerful and have such high capacities that we have seen used time and again in these tragedies. So we would need to take a good hard look at those.
Thank you. Tom, the firearm question goes to you, please.
I have stated prior to this that I was very clear on this issue. As Kyle had mentioned, these guns have riddled our schools, which is why it's at the forefront of our legislation process at this point. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of suggestions of what we should do when it comes to gun regulation. And I think that the discussion has been happening for far too long without any action. And I would absolutely 100%, we do need to decipher between what guns are used for what. These combat style rifles that are used in a lot of these mass shootings, I don't see a need for them unless we're in combat. That's a stance that I'm strong with. Some of these high capacity magazines, there's no need to have 60 bullets in a gun. I don't see a need for that unless you're at war. Bump stocks are also, I believe that they should be banned. So this is the type of literature that should be in this legislation that we see. But more importantly, I think that when it comes to gun violence in schools, we need to focus on a few other things as well. We need to ensure that our schools are using technology to identify troubled students. We need the communities to come together. We need doctors to focus on mental health screenings within their communities. And I don't think that you can put a better person at that table besides myself, who understands public policy and knows how to combine or bring together a community to ensure the safety of our children going forward.
Thank you. Randy, the question to you, please.
Thank you. As a former police officer for 8 years, I did wear the badge and carried a gun, and I am pro-Second Amendment. Although we live in a different time. I was a police officer back in the 90s. Let me tell you, it's not like it is today. It's totally different. I think we need to keep the guns out of the hands of the people who should not have them. I believe that if there are mental illness involved in any way, shape, or form, those people should not be able to have a weapon or a firearm of any kind. If there's a way that we can possibly implement any mental health issues plugged into the process, I think that would be a huge step forward in what we would be trying to accomplish here. I would also like to see ballistic testing in the state of Pennsylvania. If you do a little research, the state of New York does ballistic testing. Every time you purchase a gun in the state of New York, they shoot that gun one time. We don't do that here in Pennsylvania, and we should be looking into things like that. I'm also not for any of our teachers having any kind of weapons in the schools. I believe the only people who should have a weapon in that school are our school resource officers. They're trained to carry, and they're there to protect our children.
Thank you. And Rob, the question goes to you.
Thank you. It's all about awareness. The world has changed. I believe everything stems from home. My brother and I hunted our whole lives. I'm sure there's a lot of hunters in here, or family members that you know that do hunt. Things have changed. You go on the internet and you watch these people. I spoke about this at the last debate. They're crying out. They're telling you what they're going to do. They're giving you warning signals. They're warning signs. They're showing the weapons. They're saying what they're going to do with them. They're talking about the killings. Everything else that everyone has mentioned here does fall in place. But these signs, we can't turn our cheek and look the other way. When I went to school, there was never a shooting in any high school ever that I could ever remember in the country. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here that would agree with me on that. The world is different now. It's a different place. It's a different society. So we have to address it like that. It stems, again, from the home. Thank you.
Thank you. Francis, the question to you, please.
Yes, I'm in favor of reinstating the assault weapons ban, the federal assault weapons ban that sunset in 2004. I think we need to bring it back. I'm in favor of you must be 21 to purchase a gun. I'm in favor of Governor Wolf this week came out with his statement regarding the gun show loophole, and which he said he's pushing for background checks for private sales of shotguns, sporting rifles, and forms of assault rifles. I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of, we had an incident this week in West Scranton where a gentleman with a gun, the police arrived with a protection from abuse order. He murdered his mother and then set the house on fire. I'm in favor of, in deference to the Second Amendment, procedural due process. I want to see courts get involved very heavily here. When there is a threatening situation, threatening behavior by someone, the court should step in. The police should go to the court, and get an order to remove that weapon from that person. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, let's talk about education. Again, something that's very important across the country and here in Pennsylvania. Under its Constitution, Pennsylvania has an obligation to adequately fund public schools to provide efficient and effective education. What revenue source do you feel is adequate, fair, and reliable for funding schools? And the question goes first to Tom.
Thank you. So currently, with what we have revenue-wise, it's what's been sustaining our school districts thus far. Property taxes, unfortunately, they've gotten out of control, but they are what's funding our schools at this point. The funding formula itself is, I'm not okay with. There were too many holes in this, and it's something that needs to be looked at. I plan to work with Governor Wolf and be at that decision-making table when we decide to come up with a new funding formula for school districts. Especially if, House Bill 76 goes through, we're looking at the reliability of sales tax for our school districts. As a supporter of it, however, I understand it as a public policy major. I see all these holes in this bill as well. I think that we need to 100% tax the natural gas drilling in this country, or in this state, to ensure that we have the $250 million that is estimated at the revenue that we would gain from that. That's exactly what Governor Wolf just tacked on to our increase in school funding. There are other ways that we should explore to fund our school district, but that discussion needs to happen with people who have experience in education. And I think that I'm a good person to be at that table to move this place forward.
Randy, the question to you.
Thank you. I do have to agree, Tom, and I mentioned this at the last debate. If if we were taxing the drillers the right way, we would have a lot of money the last 6 years, from 2012 up to our current year of 2018. Not sure on an exact number. You mentioned 250 million. I think it's more than that. But if we had those monies and they were already into our school districts, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in today. I do support Senate Bill 76, raising the sales tax 1% and the wage tax up 1.8%. And it works. Everybody pays. If you rent, you pay. If you go to the store and you buy something, you pay. Anybody who works will pay. It's even. It's fair across the board, and it works. And I believe 76 is a bill that will come to the forefront. I'm not sure if it'll pass in the House and in the Senate, but I will support it. I do believe that these are the ways that we could help fund our educational system.
Thank you. Rob, the question to you.
I have to agree with both Tom and Randy on this. Any big business has to be taxed in reference to this, along with gas companies. There's that old saying, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. This system is broken. Our school system is broken. Not just in Lackawanna County, not just in the state of Pennsylvania, but this is a problem that's nationwide. The children are our future. We need to provide the best public schools possible, and they need to be funded. And we need to go after big businesses that are getting away with low taxes or no taxes at all. So again, it's something that has to be addressed in all avenues, has to be looked at, and has to change. Thank you.
Francis, the question to you, please.
Yep, I'd like to quote Article 3, Section 4 again of the PA Constitution. The General Assembly shall provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of public education to serve the needs of the Commonwealth. The good news, folks, is that the Supreme Court is now under the control of the Democrats, and some Democratic justices are speaking out about this very issue. So hopefully they'll take some action and try to spur our brother Republicans to get together. One thing I would propose is a constitutional convention. We haven't had a constitutional convention in this Commonwealth since 1967 to try to get together and put some progressivity in the income tax. It's a flat rate of 3.07%. It's very bad. It's regressive. I'm not in favor of shifting the property tax over to the sales and the income tax for that reason. So maybe we can get together and we can provide some sort of relief. I'm also in favor of a single-payer system for health care to lobby our federal legislators. It's a big cost driver for education. We've got to get the special interests out of it. Who are the special interests? The insurance companies, the providers, the doctors, the lawyers, the pharmaceuticals.
Thank you. Kyle, the question to you.
Sure. Harrisburg must rededicate itself in its commitment to public education, not only in continuing to restore the cuts under the prior Governor Corbett's administration, but we must also address this disparity between rich and poor school districts. I don't feel it's right that a funding formula in Harrisburg values one child's education more or less than another. That is a disparity that should not stand, and I would dedicate myself to making sure more dollars flow through the fair funding formula that we passed. I also believe that a shale tax is mightily important. It's something that's long overdue. It's something that it's a measure that unfortunately failed by one missed vote in recent months, but it must be coupled with other investments. It must be coupled with things like minimum host standards for new power plant construction. It must be coupled with reasonable taxes on natural gas infrastructure, pipelines, and compressor stations. Surrounding states are doing it, and every time Pennsylvanians pay their utility bill, we're paying for better schools in other states.
Okay, thank you. So I want to stick with this topic just for one more question. And I know that there is not agreement from everyone on whether or not we should move to a sales tax for funding schools. But if that were to pass, and we did have to look at and sales taxes were being used to fund schools. How would you, as a legislature, address the impact on low or fixed income residents, our seniors in particular, with increases in their sales tax bills for staples like food, non-prescription drugs, home care services, many other health-related supplies? So there's an additional, besides education funding, there is a consequence to having that change as well. So Randy, the question goes to you.
There's Andrea, and that's a good question, but once again, it's 1%. And as I stated earlier, everyone will pay. If you're here and you're working and the wage tax would go up, your wage tax would go up, but you're still paying something. If you're renting, you're paying. The school districts right now, I'll take, for example, Valley View School District. Right around $500,000 every year, they're waiting to collect. They're waiting to get their money from delinquent taxes. If we raise the sales tax 1% and the wage tax 1.88%, it's a cash cow. Every 30 days, that money's coming into the school districts. They can continue to do things. Our districts right now, they're stifled. They're stifled. They cannot afford when the taxes are delinquent. They just can't afford to be able to continue to move forward. So that money will continually come. And once again, I do know it raises the sales tax 1%, but it's not a lot in the big picture. And by the way, for those seniors that you mentioned in the question, you know, their Social Security does not get taxed at all.
Okay. And Rob, the question goes to you, please.
Yes, I agree with Randy on the first part. The sales tax, SB 76 has to pass. I was a tax collector for 12 years in Blakely, and I handled the taxes for the school, and I handled reports that I submitted for foreclosures down to the Tax Claim Bureau. And believe me, I knew these people, and they lost their homes, and senior citizens. So this, you know, this really, really affects us. It's reality, everyone. It's not a stipulation. I did this. I was elected when I was 27 years old, and I held it for 12 years. I watched the numbers. I watched the delinquencies. I watched what came in, and I watched the people that lost their homes. And it wasn't pleasant, especially if they're good friends of yours, and even if they're not. So the tax itself, I agree with what Randy did say. It's not a large amount. Everyone does have to pay. And I would rather see that than see someone that's worked their whole life, a blue-collar worker who's looking to retire, enjoy the rest of their lives, have their home swept up from a tax that is a dinosaur. Thank you.
Thank you. Francis, the question to you, please.
Yes. Of course, if it happened, there would have to be exemptions for, you know, some sort of exemptions for people of low income, but I don't know how you're going to administer that. You mentioned elderly. People must buy food, they must buy drugs, and health care and other things. And what you're doing is you're making the economy, you're imbalancing it even more. And you're also playing Russian roulette with the Commonwealth, because as I said in the last debate, we had a severe depression or recession in 2000. In 1990, when Governor Casey began his second term. People stopped buying cars, they stopped buying refrigerators. We had, as we all know, we had the most severe recession since the Great Depression in 2008. And they've been trying now for 10 years to the Federal Reserve to prop up the economy, and we're still barely making it at 2%. So you want to shift everything over to the sales tax? What happens if the economy gets cut off? It's a complete, unabashed disaster for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Kyle, a question to you.
To be clear, the property tax and property tax assessment system in Pennsylvania is broken. It's punitive on seniors on fixed income and families just starting out, trying to look for a home, trying to afford a home. My wife and I pay property taxes, so we understand the burden. My grandmother is a 91-year-old woman on fixed income who understands that burden. However, we must focus property tax relief to primary homesteads without giving massive corporate tax breaks, as is under the current bill, to corporate taxpayers. I am not in support of that type of shift, and it is more than just a 1% increase. All right, the increase from 6 to 7% would have an incredible effect, an incredible impact on the buying power of people, on fixed incomes in times of recession. So I could support Senate and House Bill 76 with changes, with compromise. And that's the type of discussion that I've been part of in Harrisburg. And that's the type of discussion I look forward to resuming as a state representative, because our citizens, our seniors, deserve our commitment to this sooner than later.
Thank you. Tom, the question to you.
I believe the 1% increase depends who you are, and it can affect you, and it can affect you to a degree that you're not happy with. And looking at it, like Kyle said, from 6 to 7%, it's not just 1%, it's from 6 to 7%. There's a lot of holes in 76, and I understand that. But I also understand by knocking on doors and talking to our senior citizens that they're in fear of losing their homes. And we have a very high demographic of elderly people in this area, and especially in this district. And I'm here to help them and to relieve that, no matter what the cost is. But like I said, I do understand the unintended consequences that it will have on our school districts, for example. Right now, if you want to push it over to the sales tax, it has to be sales tax right across the board. That means our fracking companies as well. They need to be taxed as well. And with the current funding formula, the inequities among wealthy and poor districts will still be there. So I think that, like I said, I support it due to the fact that we cannot have our elderly homeless. And we can draw things up and have discussions going forward to ensure that it's sound legislation.
Okay. Rob, this next question will go to you first. And I want to change the topic, and let's discuss clean energy as an economic driver. So I have a little bit of an intro, bear with me. Pennsylvania has 57,000 workers employed in the clean energy sector, more than the oil, gas, and coal industries combined. Pennsylvania was an early leader in promoting clean energy, but in the last few years has been falling behind. The prices of solar and wind power has dropped significantly in recent years, and they're on pace to become cheaper than coal and gas in the near future. This one I loved. Pennsylvania has some of the best wind potential east of the Mississippi. I didn't know that. There are also health benefits provided by clean energy production versus the burning of fossil fuels. So, with all of those realities in mind, what state initiatives do you support or will you support to transition Pennsylvania to a low-carbon economy? And Rob, that question goes to you.
Our environment is, without a doubt, our future. Clean air, clean water. We have a power plant that was just put up in Jessup, and everyone bragged about how many jobs we were going to get. And it was passed by council, it was passed by a solicitor, it was passed by a former state representative. It's a disaster. Our environment is a disaster. We come from a mining area where everything is leaked into the ground. It leaks into our water. I would be in favor of anything to support clean air, clean water, in not only in our district, but of course in the Commonwealth. It's just it's a disgrace when there's so many alternatives. As Pat mentioned, the solar energy. You look at other states that are capitalizing on this, that are using it for electricity to power their homes, and the price it's so much less than gas. Again, gas is only a big industry making money and sucking the life out of our Commonwealth.
Okay, thank you. Francis, the question to you.
Yeah, we're on a collision course if we don't do something about, where we're at with climate change. It's for real. I'm absolutely in favor of solar. I'm also in favor of wind. Germany's doing a lot with wind power. Pennsylvania, you mentioned 57,000 jobs. I mean, we're not Arizona, so whatever bit of efficiency we can get from solar, I'd be in favor of. I'm in favor of nuclear. There was a question came up at the last debate. Nuclear is clean. I know there's a problem with nuclear waste, but it has been handled, so I'm in favor of that. The Trump administration is about to reduce the benchmarks for efficiency of automobiles. They're about to change the standard from 50 miles per gallon to 40 miles per gallon set in 2025. I'm against that. I think we need to look at what we can do at the state level to, again, police our industry, enhanced enforcement by the DEP.
Thank you. Kyle, the question goes to you, please.
Safe air, or safe and clean air, safe drinking water, and pristine streams are one of the most important legacies we could leave our children, and we should dedicate ourselves to that at all levels of government. You're asking about legislation that we could help to ensure that. I'm incredibly proud that a piece of legislation that I worked mightily on in my prior role as Senator Blake's legislative director cleared the House Commerce Committee today after it had already passed the Senate. It's Property Assessed Clean Energy program that would allow for patient capital to make the clean energy upgrades to commercial, industrial, and agricultural properties more affordable when traditional financing would otherwise be unattainable. So these are the sort of things, these are the sort of bipartisan measures that's good for business, that's good for the environmental community, and that's good for taxpayers to ensure that everyone is working together to ensure these environmental protections. We must also increase our recycling efforts and revamp Act 101, which is our recycling statute, to make sure we are diverting as much waste as we can from landfills in this state.
Okay, thank you. And Tom, the question goes to you.
As citizens of this state, we have the right to clean air. And we need to make sure that every provision is taken to ensure that the DEP, the EP are doing what they need to ensure that we do have that right, no matter what direction of energy that we want to go in. I 100%, I'm a research-based decision kind of guy, and if you say the research, we have a lot of wind here, well, then yeah, absolutely. Wind and solar power, I think, are absolutely essential. There's something that we need to put into this area. It will create jobs, along with what Francis said as well. Nuclear energy, I've always been in favor of that. I understand the big question behind waste, but he had mentioned that it is contained. We need to begin to explore these avenues because right now we do have the natural gas industry, as Robert said, sucking us dry here in the Commonwealth. And we need to continue to explore different avenues to make sure that we have the opportunity to bring solar power and businesses here to this district. Because what we have right now are a lot of bad deals when it comes to the power plant and landfill expansions. Why are we not exploring these avenues? If you put me in Harrisburg, I will ensure that all these avenues are explored before legislation within legislation to ensure that companies come here and clean air businesses.
Randy, the question to you.
Thank you, Andrea. I would also be in favor of solar, wind, and nuclear as well. And I do support clean air, clean water. As the rest had mentioned, we do have a power plant that was built not too far from here. And in my past, I've been protecting the environment for a long time. We did a huge cleanup of the Lackawanna River. I talked about this at the last debate years ago, back in the early to late 80s. The Lackawanna River was atrocious. Couldn't go near the river. We were kids. We used to go down there. Our parents wouldn't even let us go near the water. Now, It's a beautiful river where you could fish for trout. The anglers can go and enjoy themselves. It doesn't have the smell. That's protecting our environment. We need to hold DEP, EPA accountable. We do. We have to make sure that these people at a state level are doing their jobs. You know, we do have a power plant. It is here. But we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't hold them accountable in every way, shape, or form. I've worked closely with some people from the Citizens for Healthy Jessup, as well as the Friends of Lackawanna. We need to be talking to these people. These are the people who've been out on the front lines trying to protect us. And we need to listen to them, because we can educate ourselves immensely if we let these people play a role in the process as well.
Thank you. Francis, this next question goes to you first. Let's change topics and talk about pension reform. So Pennsylvania's $71 billion unfunded pension liability is unsustainable for taxpayers and puts public employees at risk. Without timely reform, pension payments will crowd out funding for other services, property taxes will rise, and teachers may be laid off. Good pension reform means fixing the broken system and paying down pension debt without new taxes or borrowing. Please share with us your plan for reforming public employee pensions.
Well, having been a state employee for almost 29 years, I understand, you know, a bit what the issue is. Back in the early 200s, you know, the legislature thought that, and I'm sure they were lobbied heavily by the public service unions. I was never in the union. I was an administrative officer for almost 29 years, 4 months shy of 29 years. They passed so-called pension reform, and they increased the multiplier from 2% to 2.5%. And they did it at a time when, you know, the economy was booming, everything looked great, you know, the stock market was going up, you know, like that it was never going to go down, and we all know what happened, okay? So, you know, I would be in favor because it is, you know, a monster issue in state government. It's eating away at, you know, other services, education. Can we get together with the Republicans and pass some sort of reasonable reform going forward? My own opinion is that the courts are probably going to take it over at some point and mandate a solution. That's probably what's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Kyle, the question is, share your plan for reforming public employee pensions.
Sure. We must defend our workers' retirement security at all cost, because all along, through good and bad decisions of legislatures of both party control and governors of both parties, our workers have continued to pay their fair share, even when the state took a pay break, took a pay holiday. When times were good, as Mr. McHale mentioned, the state retreated or it offered benefit enhancements. In 1999, both pension systems were funded to the tune of 120%. So what did we do? Did they responsibly store nuts for the winter? No, they went ahead and gave COLA, retroactive cost of living adjustments and benefit enhancements. So it's important to understand the nature of the problem first and where the fault lies. More than 50% of our unfunded liability to date is directly attributable to decisions made in Harrisburg. Not some inherent problem with the structure of a defined benefit pension plan. So we are on a trajectory for solvency, and we are on a payment plan after some very tough reforms that were passed earlier last year.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. And Tom, the question for you, what is your plan for reforming public employee pensions?
So this problem is one of the reasons that school districts are struggling as bad as they are. I think it's absolutely important that the collective bargaining that teachers have and public employees, it needs to be fair. There needs to be a lot more transparency in the discussions that they have. I think that's one of the reasons we got into this mess. I think that protecting public employee pensions going forward is essential. I believe, though, that the influence from lobbyists in Harrisburg, though, caused a lot of this. So I think that we have to first and foremost start there. I know that as soon as property tax relief became a point, the Pennsylvania School Board Association, put on a full-on attack. And they have to understand that the reason that we got into this mess was because of the lack of transparency with the collective bargaining of teachers and public employees early on. So I think that what we need to do is stop the influences in Harrisburg so we can all sit at the table and have bipartisan discussions so we can begin to fix this dollar by dollar.
Okay, thank you. Randy, the question, what is your plan for reforming public employee pensions?
I think if we look at a 401k system as it's been talked about as something, and if it's managed correctly, I think we could move forward and hopefully try to fix this major issue that's going on. Kyle, you mentioned Harrisburg created this issue, and you're absolutely right. This has been something that's been going on for a long time. Constitutionally, we need to make sure that our people's money is protected. And, they work so hard, day in and day out, year after year, to think, boy, everything I work for, am I going to lose it? Do I have enough? Are they gonna take some of this money on me? People ask those questions. I've talked to people at their door, knocking on doors. People who were former employees of the state, asking those questions. And they're not easy to answer. So I believe if we possibly can move forward with maybe a 401k system that's managed correctly, it can start to solve some of the problems.
Thank you. And Rob, the question also to you. What is your plan for reforming public employee pensions?
First of all, both sides have to sit down. Something definitely has to be implemented. You do, again, have to have transparency with this. These people worked 20, 30, 40 years in the state. You can't take away money that's owed to them. You really can't. Any reform to benefit the people, would be absolutely necessary. And, again, they worked hard for their money. Do we need a better system? Absolutely. But you can't take what's already implemented, okay? You can't take what's already put into place. You can't rob these people of what they're expecting to retire on. You can only make the system better, and it needs to be bipartisan. Both parties have to sit down. They have to look at this in an educated manner and decide what's best for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on now. And Kyle, you'll answer this question first. I want to talk about the minimum wage. So as of January 2018, there are 29 states with a minimum wage higher than the federal minimum of $7.25. And Pennsylvania is the only mid-Atlantic state that has not raised that rate since its adoption in 2009. The annual earnings for a 40-hour full-time minimum wage worker is $15,080, which is below the poverty level for a family of two. So my question is, would you keep the current rate or increase the minimum wage? What's your rationale? And because part of what we hear is its impact on small business, if you were to increase it, what would be your plan for the impact on small businesses? So give us an idea about where you stand on the topic and how you would address it.
Certainly. I think we have opportunities in Pennsylvania not only to increase the minimum wage to a respectable level, to a family, to some semblance of a family sustaining level. But we also need to be looking at supporting our trade, our vocational programs that are offering even higher wages. And that is something that starts in the schools. It starts in the guidance offices, where we need to be talking to our students, letting them know about the types of opportunities that are out there, the jobs of the future, that we must answer the call, because those jobs are there, and those are jobs with incredibly family sustaining wages that we need to make sure we are preparing a generation and a workforce for that.
Thank you. Tom, the question to you.
I am in favor of raising the minimum wage. Right now it's proposed at $15 an hour. I think that is a little bit too much. Randy has touched on that at the last debate, saying that a lot of our businesses and employers cannot afford to pay their employees without raising the cost of their products. And so they find themselves in a pickle. And I think that if we raise it to $12.50, as other states have surrounding and bordering us, we, just based on the research behind that alone, is an estimated cost of savings of $100 million on social and human service costs by putting the money back into the pockets of the poor. And I think that it's absolutely essential we raise this. I work a job where we don't get paid an awful lot at all, and we have a tough job as a behavioral interventionist with children with autism. It is not easy. We do need to raise the minimum wage, and I will support any legislation that supports that.
Okay. Randy, the question to you pertaining to minimum wage.
Yeah, I did talk about this at the last debate. I would absolutely be in favor of raising the minimum wage, but not more than doubling it. I did talk about some small businesses and people that I've talked to over the last couple of years. This would basically put their small business out of business. They can't afford to pay those particular people more than double what they're paying them. And, of course, if they could afford to do that, well, what happens next? The loaf of bread that particular company has to sell, they have to raise the price. And then we all have to pay more. So I think if we had some type of a small steps or a tiered system and being able to raise the minimum wage, because basically we're playing catch up. We're playing catch up here. I asked my son Jared a couple of weeks ago, who works at Red Robin for minimum wage. He said, hey, what would you think if we raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour? And I thought I would have gotten a smile out of him and said, that would be great. But you know what he said to me? He said, boy, it really wouldn't give me I wanted to be able to work harder to get my money. And it wouldn't give me the opportunity to advance just giving me an extra $7 or $8 or looking to move myself in a supervisory position where I work. No incentive, just kind of giving me another $7 or $8 an hour. And we do have children who are graduating from college who would be coming out and working for $28,000 or $30,000 a year with a 4-year degree, making just as much as someone who wouldn't have that particular degree, making the same amount of money.
Thank you. And Rob, the question to you.
Yes, I agree with everyone what they did say in reference to this. It does have to be increased. To throw a dollar amount out there, I don't know how you could do that yet. I think we need more research with this. We need to look into it more. Where it's at now, it's definitely impossible to sustain a family. And if there anyone is in here sustaining a family on that, I'd like you to raise your hand, because it's got to be very, very difficult on minimum wage. Whether you as a husband or a wife or both of you working together, it's got to be impossible to run a household, to pay your bills, to take care of your rent or take care of your mortgage. So absolutely increase, yes. Dollar amount, I think there needs to be more research with this. I really, really do. $15 an hour is quite a bit of money to go up. 12 may be okay, but again, I think we really need to take a real hard look at this and come up with an answer for it.
Thank you. Francis, the question to you.
Yep, I would absolutely be in favor of an increase in the minimum wage, but the problem, this is how I see the problem. Since that terrible recession in 2008, we've been trying now for 10 years to get some traction in the economy, and we've had very little wage inflation, and it's very frightening to me. In fact, there were numbers out today about the economy that it's weakening. And here we have this tremendous tax cut that's supposed to solve all our problems. That's a joke. So how do we solve the problem? We need a stronger Democratic Party. We need to rebuild our industrial unions. I said this before, I'll say it again. The John Mitchell statue, he's quoted, "I wish to see the interests of labor and industry reconciled, not by surrender, but by mutual understanding. You can have a strong economy and you can have strong industrial unions. My brother's here tonight. My sisters and brothers grew up in a union family. My father was a union member for 35 years. We know what it's like. It can happen again, and that's what I'm for. Strong unions to lift the bottom. People have no leverage over their employers. They're at their mercy, and that's why we're in the trouble that we're in.
Thank you. Okay, so we have time for one more question. Tom, you'll answer this question first. It's another difficult topic. We want to cover the criminal justice system. So the League of Women Voters believes that our justice system should be fair to all, effective, cost-efficient, and data-driven. Persons should not be deprived of constitutional rights to reasonable bail or effective counsel based on income or politics. A number of legislators are advocating for changes to the state's criminal justice system, including standardizing bail across counties and increasing funding for public defense. In late April, the Senate Judiciary Committee narrowly passed a measure to let judges sentence defendants to community service if they prove they can't afford fines, court costs, or restitution. So, here's the question. What is your position on efforts to reform the state criminal justice system so that it doesn't have a disparate impact on low-income defendants and is more effective, lowering the rates of recidivism and lessening taxpayers' burden in the long run? I know it's a big question, but it goes to you first.
That's fine. Our criminal system needs reforming. I mean, our prisons, we have the amount of people that we incarcerate is absolutely out of control. And I think that it does need to start with legislation that revolves around bail, revolves around certain sentencings. Our judges around here are very good, and I think that they set a very good standard to how this is supposed to play out. Now, certain crimes that happen don't necessarily, sometimes they carry a sentence a little bit too harsh, especially for people who don't have the appropriate funds to get the defense that they need to get out of the jam. And I think that it's absolutely important that we take a look at this. We take a look at the hard research and facts that is readily available for all of our legislators. And that's the first step we need to take. We need to take that step and ensure that we have the information necessary to reform this in a proper and equitable way.
Randy, the question on the criminal justice system, please, to you.
Yeah, Tommy, I would have to totally agree with you. I'm going to go back to 1999. We're talking about reform. The county started a drug court back in 1999 with Judge Barrace, and Judge Barrace implemented a lot of things to help with some of these issues that we're having, like you mentioned, our prisons. There are people sitting in our prisons who are costing the county taxpayers thousands and thousands of dollars. Where else do we put them? Where else do they go? And it's not just here. It's not just in Lackawanna County. It's in all the other 67 counties in the state of Pennsylvania. When I was a commissioner, I sat on the Courts and Corrections Committee in the state of Pennsylvania, and we talked about a lot of these issues back then. And we still have them today. So we do need to look at reforming the system and how it works, and talking to our judges, who I believe as well do a fantastic job in doing what they do to help the cause here locally. But we need it more on a state level. We need to bring the Republicans and Democrats together with some of the judges, like a Judge Barrace, and let's bring him to Harrisburg with some other judges statewide and fix this problem, because it's costing us millions of dollars.
Thank you. Rob, the question to you.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit from what Tom and Randy did say. We do need fairness with this. I mean, all crimes are different. Again, we do need transparency also. The situation does need reforming. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Any sentencing needs to be looked at for what the crime actually is. Like they did mention, people are sitting in these cells and sitting in our jails, and they're costing us a fortune year after year after year. So, like I said before, if it needs to be fixed, this is something that definitely needs to be looked on both sides, the parties, and there's definitely needs some reform and fixing with this.
And Francis, the question to you.
Yep. I'm against capital punishment. That's number one. We need more money for public defenders. We need to reduce the time that people are on probation. Sometimes the probation periods go on forever and ever. We need to bring that down. I'm for rehabilitation in prisons to get people job training. And also, I'm old enough to remember when the federal government was heavily involved in jobs programs in our inner cities. And it's just disappeared in the last 20, 25 years. We need to somehow lobby the federal government to create jobs programs. I live in Scranton. I think we have a lot of potential in Scranton, but we have a lot of problems in Scranton, and we need all the help we can get.
And Kyle, the question to you.
Sure. Our prisons are clearly at capacity. We have an overcrowding problem. So we need to take a number of steps, and one of the simplest is to stop criminalizing certain nonviolent crimes as well as those suffering addiction. We need to increase our treatment efforts for them. We should make sure that employers who are considering applicants with criminal histories can't discriminate against certain types of criminal histories to ensure that these men and women emerging from detention, trying to start a new life and to start over and get a second chance, are given that opportunity without the stigma or the discrimination that comes when they check that box regarding that indicates their criminal history. So it comes down to tough choices about what type of nonviolent crimes and how can we reduce our overcrowding problem in prisons.
Thank you. Unfortunately, gentlemen, because I still have more questions, we are out of time. So with that, we'll start the round of closing statements. And the name that was drawn first for the first closing statement, Francis, you will go first.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the University of Scranton for hosting this debate. I'd also like to mention Professor Michael D. Michelle, who's retiring in a few weeks after 50 years of teaching here, and Professor Riaz Hussein, who's retiring after 51 years. Father Al Panushka of the Society of Jesus, who passed away in 2017, was the longest-serving president of the University of Scranton. Among his many accomplishments, he held a PhD in biology. Once during a conversation I had with him, he lamented the failure of the American people to recognize the humanity of the fetus, though hidden from view, yet no different than you and I in its nature. In the case of Roe versus Wade on October 11th, 1972, an oral argument before the United States Supreme Court, Attorney Sarah Weddington urged the court to follow the example of other states who passed statutes liberalizing their abortion laws. She stated, quote, "We now have other statistics coming from California and other states that show that not only has the overall birth rate declined, but the welfare birth rate has also declined accordingly," end quote. A similar argument was made in 1927 in the Supreme Court case of Buck versus Bell. The court allowed the Commonwealth of Virginia to involuntarily sterilize 18-year-old Carrie Buck. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, writing for the majority, had this to say, we have seen more than once that the public welfare may call for the best citizens for their lives. It would be strange if it could not call upon those who already sap the strength of the state for lesser sacrifices," end quote. The sterilization of Carrie Buck was by force. In contrast, the act of abortion is always by choice, yet both can never be morally justified. So I ask, how is it fair on the American system of government in place since Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973? Tens of millions of young humans who are just like us at our earliest stages of existence, for whatever reasons, have had their right taken away. The National Democratic Party did not speak for Governor Casey, and it does not speak for me on this issue.
Thank you. Kyle, your closing statement, please.
I'd, of course, like to thank the League of Women Voters and the University of Scranton for hosting us and everyone for attending tonight, including my fellow candidates. I'd also like to thank my wife for her incredible patience and support. On May 15th, voters will make a very critical decision. They will decide if we want a new direction, new leadership in this district, or if we could take another turn. We need to make up for lost representation. We need to make up for lost time in this district. I believe in our community. I believe in public service. I always have, and I always will. This is part professional, but also personal. I've got a young son who I want to make sure that this area is as vibrant and prosperous as possible. So he may someday have the same choice and opportunity that my wife and I did to find opportunities here and build a family of his own here. That's on us. We have lots to be proud of today, but we could also do better. We could create a better job climate and create more job opportunities so we can make that dream of establishing your families here come true. We need to provide all the necessary protections for our school children, for our women, for our seniors. We need to strengthen our senior programs and veterans programs. We need to serve and protect those who protect and serve us so well. And we need to reform our government along the lines of what I mentioned earlier. So it is my intention to live up to those promises in Harrisburg, and it's my intention to hit the ground day one running in Harrisburg as your state representative.
Thank you. Tom, your closing statement, please.
Thank you, Andrea, and the League of Women Voters as well, and University of Scranton for hosting this event along with my fellow candidates. After knocking on thousands of doors and receiving input from people within this district, it's abundantly clear that the lack of representation in this district has left us stagnant, vulnerable. We are visibly desperate for real representation. First and foremost, I will fight against any expansion of the Keystone landfill, which can further depress the economic development in this region, let alone the so-called information that we have regarding the environmental impact as well as the potential health hazards that go along with it. Furthermore, I will sponsor legislation to reduce the state legislature. I will work with Governor Wolf to improve the funding formula for public schools in Pennsylvania. And we will work together to impose a severance tax on all natural gas drilling in Pennsylvania. It's also very clear that we need to reform ethics standards in Harrisburg so that we can curb the influence lobbyists have in Harrisburg. I honestly think that this decision is clear. We can go down one path and empower the good old boy network and the lobbyists, or you can choose a representative who will put the power into the hands of the people. This is in total contrast of my opponent, Kyle Mullins, who is accepting wads of cash from lobbyists to fund his campaign and to ensure
Okay.
and to ensure that he has flooded the television with political committees as well as campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for that. I'm here before you asking for your partnership. I'm asking to have a partnership among you guys to bring your needs to the forefront of the decision-making process in Harrisburg.
Thank you. Your time is up. Randy, your closing statement, please.
I also want to thank the League of Women Voters and the University of Scranton for hosting this debate tonight, and the rest of the candidates up here. It's not easy to run for office and be up here and answering questions, so I commend each and every one of you here at the table. I also want to thank my wife, my family, my children for supporting me in this effort. You know, it's not about signs. It's not about Facebook friends. It's not about how much money you have. I'm a deep-rooted Democrat. And I'm one of the hard-working, working-class family members, just like you are, that sit out here in the audience. I have 5 children, 3 of those in college. It becomes very costly. It's very costly to put children through college and to raise a family. And I know it firsthand. I'm living it every day. I want to make our colleges affordable for our families. I want to protect our seniors. And I want to be there for our veterans. And I've done a lot of that in the past in my prior 25 years of public service. I have proven experience in leadership to be your next state representative. I'm going to tell you a little story. Last year, March 14th, 2017, we were hit with a major blizzard. Night of the blizzard, came home and I said to my wife, I have to do something to help people in this particular situation. I look out at the audience and I see a good friend of mine, Tom Owens, who has a plow truck and individuals who would help me get people to where they needed to get to during the storm and the blizzard. Getting people food, delivering medication, borrowing trucks and plows to get people where they needed to go. That's proven leadership. Getting the nurses to our sick who need help. That's proven leadership. Getting the boys from the high schools, the athletes, to help shovel people out. That's proven leadership. And I'm here to go to Harrisburg to represent you the best I possibly can with my experience in leadership. I humbly ask for your vote on May 15th.
Thank you. And Rob, your closing statement.
I want to thank you, Andrea, and thank the League of Women Voters and the University of Scranton. I also want to thank my wife, Iris. When I'm at work every day, she is out campaigning. This woman has epilepsy, fibromyalgia, and arthritis, and she is out every day for me and my committee, every day. Okay? I mean, if that's not love, I don't know what is. 20% of my salary goes back to the district. Remember that, everyone. I'm the only one up here that's doing that. Why? Because it's the right thing. Town meetings, clean environment. That's all essentials. We all need that. And I believe everyone here would agree with me on that. I wouldn't dispute anyone's closing statements because everyone has their own way of handling things and saying things. There's so many issues that we have out there. There's so many issues that this district has. And my passion for this, I'll never quit. I will always fight for you. And I'll never, ever be a puppet for any PACs or any lobbyists. No one has ever controlled me in my life, and no one ever will. I will meet with Republicans. I will speak with them. I will make it a better district. And what I want to say tonight is, for the other four that I'm running against, regardless of this election, what happens, we will join forces, and no Republican will take this seat.
That concludes our debate this evening. I want to thank everyone for joining us here. And I also want to thank my fellow league members. I want you to know that we're all volunteers, and it takes a team and it takes a village to put one of these together. So thank you to all of the league members here. And how about a round of applause for all of the candidates for their commitment to democracy? This is an important race. Thank you so much.
Right now.